So let me go ahead and get us started here today. So my name is Carlos Huerta. I serve as the Associate Director of the Center for Community Transformation at Fresno Pacific University. Part of our work at the center is to build a social entrepreneurial ecosystem in California's Central Valley. Our workshop today, How to Build Your Social Business, is but one of our many offerings. I really encourage you to check out our website, cctfresno.org, which I will post in our chat here today. You can click under the Social Enterprise tab to learn more. Now, I am curious, I do note people from, as I've seen registration, I would like to know where everyone is from. So if you can post in the chat, maybe where you're from. Like I said, we're here located in Fresno, California, but I'd like to know where people are from today. So go ahead and plug that into the chat there. Now, I want to establish some quick expectations for our time together. So quick housekeeping here. Again, you will all be muted for the first 40 minutes. I know this is not ideal, but during this time, we feel like this has been the most effective way to cover a workshop and then set up some Q&A for the last 20 minutes or more of our time here. So during this time, we'll go through content, but we do invite you to ask questions in the chat box. And so in our experience, most questions that people have in these types of workshops, and specifically in this workshop, are actually answered throughout the workshop itself. So at about the 7:10 mark, we will then break into a Q&A time. This is when we'll start the questions asked in the chat and move forward from there. The other thing that you'll receive an email with, we've opened up an option for 20-minute meetings in between workshops 1, 2, and 3. And so as you saw in the description of the workshop, we've morphed this workshop itself into a 3-part series. And so in those 20-minute meetings in between workshops 1 and 2, we do provide consultation and feedback as you are working on your social business. A Calendly link will be emailed to you, and I encourage you to tap into that and correspond with us more. So now, without taking too much more time from Alex, I want to introduce him really quickly. Alex works at the largest technology hub in California's Central Valley, Bitwest Industries. Alex is a husband. He's also a serial entrepreneur. He's working currently on his 4th venture. He was also the brain behind the Central Valley's only social enterprise accelerator, which is housed at the Center for Community Transformation. He loves coaching founders, connecting them to the right people. And I will note a fun fact about Alex is that he finds John Mulaney to be hilarious. And I agree with him. So if you don't know who John Mulaney is, we encourage you to check him out on Netflix. So without taking too much more time, Alex, I'm gonna shift host duties to you, and let's go ahead and get our day started here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Carlos, for the kind intro, and thanks everybody for being here. Really excited to be here. I'm excited to share both what I've learned from those who know a lot more than I do, and also from personal failure points, honestly, that I've had in my journey as a social entrepreneur. And so let's get rolling. Where we're headed today, we're going to cover a number of things, what social enterprise is and why it's an effective model. We're going to talk about your idea. We're going to talk about how do you go about building a social enterprise. We're going to talk about what problems are we solving through our social enterprise. And we're also going to talk about your plan from here as you leave this workshop today. So let's dive into it. What is a social enterprise? So for those of you who are not as familiar with the concept of social enterprise, the most basic definition that we've come across is a business that exists to solve a social and environmental problem. So another way to say it is social enterprise is a great model for solving social and environmental problems through sustainable and scalable businesses. So there's really 2 parts here. You have the impact, which is the mission, the purpose, that's solving the social environmental problem there. You also have the business. Those are kind of the 2 main components there of a social enterprise. You could say in social enterprise that a lot of businesses have a mission statement or they have a sense of purpose, but social enterprises uniquely exist because of the problem that they are trying to solve in the world. So this mission or purpose isn't an afterthought statement or a side dish per se. It's the very reason that the company exists, and they let that purpose drive every decision in the company. A good way to think about it is that a social enterprise is like a rope, and the 2 strands of business and impact make the rope stronger. These two things, business and impact, in a lot of contexts can see separate or like incompatible. But when we fuse them together in social enterprise, we see that they can actually benefit from each other. They can actually be complementary to each other. So something to remember in social enterprise: the better you are at both the impact and the mission and also the business, the more impact you'll be able to make. So with the impact and the business, let's talk about both of these here. Social entrepreneurs care deeply about both components, both the impact and the business side. And so because of that, they set goals for both, they measure progress and results for both, and they make improvements on both. So both the impact and the business side of the company are getting a lot of focus from social entrepreneurs. So again, some people might say that these two components are things that don't mix well, like maybe oil and water. Or say that maybe when you put these two things together, it turns into a game of tug of war where you have to choose which one to focus on. But social entrepreneurs, as they grow and learn how to marry these two things together, you can see that your decisions can actually benefit both, and that they can complement each other. The best social entrepreneurs become awesome at solving problems in the world that they care about, and also awesome at building successful businesses at the same time. So let's just do a quick overview of some types of social enterprises. The first model is an embedded model where the focus is on the product or the service. And so just a super simple metaphor would be, let's say you're a farmer and you grow vegetables. So in the embedded model, your vegetable solves the problem, probably by someone eating it, or maybe it's the nutrients that they need. The second type is an integrated model, which focuses on how you run your business. So how you run the business solves the problem that you're trying to solve. So in the integrated model, let's say with the farmer, it's how you grow the vegetables and or who you hire to grow and pick the vegetables. That's what solves the problem. Then some social enterprises have an external model, which can also be called like a giving back model, where you're using your sales and your profits to solve the problem. So the focus here is how you give back with what you have left over as you're running your business. So as the farmer, you could take the money left over from selling your vegetables and use those profits to solve the problem. So this is a little bit theoretical. Let's give some examples of some real social enterprises. Here's an example from our community. Community music school. So this is a embedded model where their quote unquote vegetable solves the model or solves the problem. They provide an after-school extracurricular activity for students in lower income neighborhoods who don't have access to high quality music instruction or quality after-school programs in general. So the music programs that they're providing is how they are solving the problem. It's the product or the service that they are providing. An example of the integrated model is a local thrift store in Fresno called Neighborhood Thrift. So how Neighborhood Thrift runs their thrift store solves the problem that these people are facing. So Neighborhood Thrift runs the thrift store. They employ people on welfare or on social services who have barriers to employment and wouldn't otherwise be given a chance to get full-time employment. This allows their workers to earn an income, develop skills, and take control to change their life trajectory. So that's an example of an integrated social enterprise. An example of an external social enterprise, again, where you're using your sales and profits to solve a problem. Lana Coffee is a great local example here. It's a coffee company here in Fresno, California. They somewhat can fit into two models, but let's focus on how they give back. So Lana contributes to the public utility infrastructure in Thailand. So a portion of all coffee profits of every bag of coffee that they sell is used to build clean water wells across villages in Thailand. And so there's a lack of clean water in Thailand. And so the more money and profits that Lana Coffee is able to make, the more that they are able to solve that problem. So even though these are some cool sounding examples, why social enterprise? So why is social enterprise a great way to solve social and environmental problems in the world? And why would we use this to try and impact the world? And I think there's a couple of reasons that really stand out. One of them is how social entrepreneurs use revenue rather than relying on donations. So in a social enterprise, you're really fueled by the revenue from your business and you're not reliant on donations from others, which many of you have probably experienced that in nonprofit world. It can be distracting or difficult or limit your ability to scale and really impact more people. The other aspect is that in a social enterprise, doing good is tied into every part of your business. Instead of in some businesses that we see of companies that you would probably recognize the name of, doing good is kind of an afterthought. Once they've already made their money, they then start thinking, oh, how can we use this excess? Don't pay attention to how we made the money, but let's try to do some good to improve our image after we've made our money. So let's take a second to focus in on your idea. So if you came here with an idea for a social enterprise, let's look at that. Where did your idea come from? What inspired it? And let's go ahead and enter your current idea into the chat box. So like I said, many of you probably came here with an idea. Maybe you have a new one now since we've even started in the last 12 minutes. So let's take a look and read some of these here. Yeah, sorry. So someone just asked for us to repeat the question. So if you have an idea for a social enterprise, no matter what it is, let's just enter your idea into the chat box here. When you hover over the Zoom screen, you should be able to see a button that says chat, and that'll open up the chat box. You can type in. Very cool. So we have curriculum development for school districts who usually can't afford those types of services. Awesome. Very cool. That's a great example. So feel free to keep throwing those ideas in there. We're going to keep rolling. So wherever you came with, whatever idea you're at, something really important to pay attention to is that this is your current idea. So really the emphasis is that it's current. You know, this is at this moment, this is the best thing that you have come up with based on your experience, based on your creativity. And so something that my mentor who got me into entrepreneurship told me, he said, it sounds weird, but it's very, very important. So he told me, don't marry your current idea. Okay, marry your current idea, bad. Instead, he said to date your current idea. Just date. So really what he was trying to convey there is that your current idea is your current best hypothesis. So kind of like the scientific method, right? It's your current idea is a hypothesis, and it's your job as a social entrepreneur to test that hypothesis. Let me just take some weight off your shoulders right now. It's not your job to have all of the answers. It's not your job to have everything figured out. It's your job to just continue learning, to test your best ideas, and to keep moving forward as you keep learning and going. This social entrepreneurship in general, and definitely social entrepreneurship as well, is not like other places in life where the winners never get anything wrong. Building a business requires testing your hypothesis, and that means getting a lot of things wrong as you figure everything out along the way. So here's a question for you. Would you rather try to hit a target with a bow and arrow from 200 feet away, or would you rather try to hit a target 5 feet away 40 times? So it's kind of a silly question. I mean, it's a lot easier to hit a target from 5 feet away with a bow and arrow. But the first way is kind of a metaphor of the traditional way of starting a business. So lots of planning, lots of thinking, lots of secrecy, lots of pressure on the big launch day, basically lots of aiming, right, with the bow and arrow. And honestly, and I share this because I've been there, sometimes this is what people do when they're scared, to let other people see their project that they've been working on so much, and it's hard to show that. The second way, which is the metaphor of the target 5 feet away 40 times, that represents kind of the new way of starting a business, and that includes social enterprises as well. It's about doing a lot of small tests and talking to a lot of the people that you're trying to serve, because you recognize that you're not some magic guru with a wand in an ivory tower. You're an entrepreneur who is willing to be wrong so you can find your way to the answer. A great example of this, how many of you have heard of pets.com? So not sure if you've heard of it or not. So their story, they started in 1998, and they did lots of planning, lots of studying, lots of research. They appeared, actually, they had a couple big moments. They appeared in the 1999 Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which back then, even more people, I think, were watching that on television. And then in 2000, they paid for an ad in the Super Bowl. Millions of dollars went into that ad in the Super Bowl. By the end of 2000, that same year, they were bankrupt. So this company that had gotten so much publicity and had taken 2 huge swings, they planned big, they took 2 big swings. Those 2 swings were hard misses, and they went bankrupt. Now, if you type in pets.com, you just go to PetSmart's website. So that's their legacy. So I want to share with you a process that I've gathered from other people, and I've learned the hard way on how to avoid those 200-foot arching mistakes like pets.com, and shoot at closer targets to give you smaller successes along the way. So we're going to cover some steps to build a social enterprise. So even though you're currently muted and we're miles away or across the world, and you might even be sitting by yourself, I would encourage you that even if you're watching this 3 years from now on the recording, read these out loud to help them kind of sink in into your brain. So here we go. Step 1, find a problem. Step 2, talk to people. Step 3, brainstorm solutions. Step 4, build an MVP. Step 5, test your MVP. Step 6, improve your MVP. I saw at least a few people mouthing along. So, all right, great job. Way to participate. You may know, okay, so this is a super high level overview, and you might notice a few things, right? You might notice that the problem comes way before the solution, and that is definitely on purpose. So what I like to tell people is their problem first, your solution later. Their problem first, your solution later. Problem first, solution later. Problem first, solution later. And I know I'm being silly, but it's really incredible how helpful this is and how hard it is for most entrepreneurs, myself included, as we got started. In this process, you don't even start thinking about solutions really until step 3, and we'll talk about why later. You might be asking from this list, who should I talk to? Like who are people? People is kind of vague, and that's a great question. You should be talking to people who have the problem you're trying to solve, and no one else, not your friends, not your mom, only people with the problem. And we'll talk more about who that is later. In this list, you might notice that step 3 is plural. It seems like multiple solutions or ideas, and that's totally true. There are many ways to solve this problem for these people that you care about or for your customers. Your job is to first understand the problem really well, and then pick the solution that you think will best solve the problem, and you test that, see if it works. If it doesn't, what is another solution? If you really care about this problem, you keep testing solutions after solutions. Now, something that might not be obvious, you might be saying, what the heck is an MVP? Like that is on half of, it's half the steps right there. So that is startup lingo. So welcome to the club, trying to include you, bring you into the club of startup lingo. It stands for minimum viable product. So don't worry about that. It basically just means it's the simplest thing you can build to solve your customer's problem. The cool thing about your MVP is that it's the best way to get started and for you to learn about the problem you're trying to solve as quickly as possible. So again, half of these steps are about MVPs, right? So it's all about learning and trying new things based on what you learn. You're trying to move as fast and swiftly as possible as you're getting started, to help maintain momentum and keep a positive sense of momentum. So we'll cover the MVP and what that looks like and how to build that later on. And so in a future webinar, since this is a 3-part series. But just a quick explanation. So let's say you're trying to help people with transportation. An example of how you would build an MVP would be to build them a skateboard and hand that to them and see how it helps the problem. And then build on that skateboard a little bit more and turn it into a scooter. And then you build on that scooter and you turn it into a bicycle. And you see how, if that is solving the problem you're trying to solve. And then if that's working, you turn that bicycle into a motorcycle. And then eventually you turn it into, let's say, like a nice Tesla car or something. So if the issue is transportation, the Tesla car is not the easiest thing for you to build and for you to be able to learn quickly. The easiest thing is just a simple skateboard, piece of wood, couple wheels, 2 trucks. And so we really encourage, the MVP would be something simple for you to be able to learn. The focus is on moving fast to figure out whether you're actually being helpful or not. That's something that's really important to learn as quickly as possible. But don't worry, again, we'll cover MVPs a lot more in an upcoming webinar. Another thing, you might already be down the road and have an MVP or have talked to people, and that's great. And we're looking forward to meeting you where you're at and walking you through the process. Everything you've done so far is really valuable, and you've been learning a lot along the way. And once you practice this process, you can get to the point where you can test any business or social enterprise idea within 30 days. So people who are very experienced in this process are able to test things very quickly, like within 1 month. So today we're going to be focusing on the first and second steps as they're the foundation for this whole process. So let's get started. So finding a problem. We're going to start here with step 1. We are going to find a specific problem that someone has. So a lot of you entered some ideas into the chat box. So let's have you enter the problem that you're trying to solve with your idea. So let's take a minute to enter those in the chat box. Again, whatever idea that you have, what is the problem for the people you're trying to help or serve? Okay, we've got real-time relief for social improvement during COVID-19, focusing on nurses with masks and homeless foster youth. It's great. Definitely a very severe problem during this time. So here's some examples. So let's dive into what a problem is. A problem is another way to say it is a pain point, frustration, or a difficulty. It's focused on someone's friction or difficulty that they're experiencing. So some examples: I have so many things to do every day and I can't keep track of it all, so I end up forgetting some of those things. Or I want to eat healthy but I don't have enough time. Or I have a record and so no one's willing to hire me. Or I can't drink the tap water in my community because it's polluted. Those are some examples of problems that people have. So there's a big debate about whether people pursue pleasure or avoid pain. And what neuropsychologists are discovering is that people tend to avoid pain more often than they really pursue pleasure. And so solving a problem, focusing on the problem that someone has, is a really effective way to build a business on, since their actions are more drawn in that direction. So we definitely want to go from a broad problem into a specific problem. So instead of saying, okay, my organization is going to fight homelessness, or my organization is going to reduce waste, you could hone in on that problem and make a specific problem, saying, I'm going to serve homeless veterans who need transitional housing to help them get back on their feet and qualify for specific services available to them. Or with the reducing waste, the problem is that many rural schools and apartment complexes, again, in rural areas, can't afford to have their recycling picked up in those remote locations. And so they have to throw it into the trash. So again, that's a much more specific problem. With broad problems, it's hard to know where to start and hard to know when you're making a meaningful difference. So it's often a really good idea to narrow in on a specific problem as much as you can. And in social enterprise, we have a unique challenge that there are 2 types of problems that we have to solve. you have the impact and the business. And again, typically this is how people think of these two ideas, separate from each other. But again, we can think about it this way, that they actually complement each other. So the first problem, the impact problem, you're addressing a social or an environmental issue, something in the world that you care about. This is your cause, your North Star. This is easier for people to care about usually. And it's likely what inspired your idea and what inspired you to join us today. And it feels like the mission or purpose of the business or the heart. It's definitely a rallying point for your team to remember why you're doing this. And some of your customers will be attracted to you because of this mission, because of your impact problem that you're solving. Now, not all of your customers will care about the mission, but a lot of them will be. So on the other hand, we have the business problem. This is the second type of problem that your social enterprise needs to be solving. So you're addressing a business pain point here. And this is really the engine of your social enterprise. You're finding someone who will pay you for the product or service that you're offering. So basically, you need to make money so you can stay alive in your business and grow, right? There's a phrase that says, no money, no mission. So if you're not making money, you can't continue the mission. And the flip side of that is more money, more mission. So in social enterprise, growing sales will help you grow your impact. So here we are again, impact in business. So to clarify who we're talking about, we are going to use these names to keep it clear. So the people who have the impact problem, the social and environmental problem, we're going to call them the beneficiary, okay? And then people who have the business problem, we're going to call them the customer. This is just going to help us keep it clear on who we're talking about. These two people are almost always different, but if you can find a way for them to be the same, that's great. That's wonderful. So here we go. Again, beneficiary, person benefiting from the impact problem, customer, they're paying you to solve their business problem. So let's dive into some examples here. So the community music school that we talked about earlier, the beneficiary would be the student that's participating in the music program, and the customer, the person who's actually paying, is actually the school district who has some funds set aside for programs like this. So the beneficiary, again, the student, customer paying is the school district. Another example is the King's Recycling Company. So it's a company that gathers the recycling that we kind of talked about earlier in the rural areas and then takes them to a recycling center to make money. So the beneficiaries are, there's less waste in the landfills, so everybody gets to experience health benefits from that. But also the people that they employ are participants in their rehab program. So they actually have two beneficiaries. And the unique thing is that they have a social problem and an environmental problem. And the recycling center is actually their customer. So who's paying the bill, right? So it's not the community members paying the bill. It's not the rehab program participants paying the bill. It's the recycling center. And the third example is of the Headspace meditation app. So this is a unique situation where the beneficiary and the customer are actually the same person. So trying to improve mental health by meditation. So the person who pays for it is also the person who benefits from it. So again, this is kind of unique. It doesn't always happen, but when it does, it's wonderful, and Headspace has grown tremendously because of it. So how do you find a problem? So one way is to scratch, basically try to scratch your own itch, right? So we're talking about personal experience here. You know the pain point yourself and how, if the potential solution would work or not. Your own experience, whether you've experienced at work, listening to what others say, keeping your eyes open, but also empathy, right? Empathy is so important if you want to start a social enterprise or any business. You can step into the shoes of someone else so you can understand and feel their pain point. So that's how you find a problem. But how do you find the right problem? How do you know if it's an important problem or where you can actually make money, or if this is the right one for you and your team? Again, self-awareness and empathy is a great place to start. In this part of the journey, you can find problems that really tear at your heart and make you excited to do something about. And empathy allows you to step into the shoes, again, of the people that you're serving. Another way to find the right problem is to find someone whose hair is on fire. So a lot of venture capital investors talk about finding customers whose hair is on fire. Basically, their problem is so intense that if you handed them a brick, they would snatch it out of your hands and start smashing it on their head to put out the fire. Like, that is how intense the problem is to them. Another way you find the right problem is by talking to customers. So one of my startups' names was Learn Money, and one of the mistakes that we made is that we spent all of our time for 6 months talking to beneficiaries and almost zero time talking to customers. So we were developing a pretty good idea on how to help people, but we had almost no clue how to really make money in order to be able to serve those people. So I have some questions here to help you. I've gathered from other people to help you discover if this is a good problem for you to try and solve or not. So Michael Seibel is the CEO of Y Combinator, which is one of the world's best known business accelerators for new startups. And then Eric Ries is the author of The Lean Startup, which is a really transformational book that has helped to shape both leading thoughts around entrepreneurship, as well as a lot of the content that you're getting here in these sessions. And these questions were designed for evaluating the business problem, but I think almost all of them can be used to evaluate the impact problem as well. So here are the questions, and you all have a handout, and you'll have access to the recording of this. So don't feel like you have to scurry to write all these down. But first, how intense is my customer's problem or my beneficiary's problem? Number two, how often does my customer or my beneficiary have this problem? Number three, do my customers know that they have this problem that I'm trying to solve for them? And number four, how many people have this problem? So if it should be more intense, if it's more intense, they're more likely to want to accept the solution that you're providing to them. How often? If they don't have it very often, then it's going to be difficult for you to come back to them. You know, if it happens once every 10 years, then you have to keep finding new people all the time. If they don't know they have the problem, then you have to convince them, and that's often pretty difficult. And then if not that many people have the problem, then you're not going to be able to build a very big business. It's going to be hard to find people. So questions 5 through 8. And this is the other side. Should I try to solve this problem? So, sorry, the first 4 are kind of more around, is this a good problem to solve in general? And 5 through 8 here are around, should I try to solve this problem? So are they willing to pay for me to solve it? Have I experienced the problem myself? And if not, am I close with anybody who's experienced this problem? Can I actually build a solution for this problem I'm trying to solve? And how easy is it for my customers to find me or for me to find them? So this will be one of the homework assignments that we give to you all, to go through these questions and honestly assess and figure out if the specific problem that you found doesn't score very well on these questions. Is there another way that you can tackle this sort of like sense of mission and thing that you care about? So let's narrow in on a specific problem. So one way that we do that is we state the problem in one sentence. So your goal with whatever problem it is, the impact problem or the business problem, should be to be able to state this problem in one sentence. So here's an example with, I got to give credit to Google again, the Growth Google program. So here's a format sentence where you can fill in these blanks here. So name is a person's characteristics who needs person's needs because insight. So here's an example. Michael is a single father of 4 kids who needs dinner delivered because he doesn't have time to pick up food after work or get groceries. So this is one sentence, very specific, and really hones in instead of just hunger or eating healthy. It's not a huge problem like that. It's very specific for Michael and what he's experiencing. So we're gonna keep rolling, but give it a chance. What's a one sentence, if you haven't already tried, a one sentence version of the problem that you're trying to solve? And as you answer these questions, as you try to state the problem in one sentence, how does your current idea sound? Remember, this is your current idea. You should always be expecting to make changes, improvements based on what you learn. And if your idea no longer sounds good, ditch it. Remember, you're dating your ideas. We're not marrying your ideas. What you should hold on tight to is the mission of doing something meaningful to solve a problem in the world that you really care about. And everything else around that can be held more loosely. So the second step here, we are going to be talking to customers. So you found a problem, and you're going to be talking to people who have this problem. So what is the best way to talk to customers, and what is important to figure out? Really, who are we talking to, right? Who are these customers? So again, on the impact side or on the business side, we're going to be talking to only people who have the problem, right? Not your friends, not mom or dad, not people, especially people who are going to be supportive and be blind, right? We're going to talk you up too much. So we're talking to people who have the problem. When you're doing this, you are going to want to do more listening and less talking. Okay, this is a discovery session for you to learn. This is absolutely not you pitching your idea. Okay, we want to hone in on the problem. And to do so, we're going to have to ask more broad and open-ended questions. This is going to be the style and the flow of the conversation. You're going to want to talk almost as little as possible. If you can get them to open up and to share a lot about their problem that they're experiencing, you're going to learn so much, and you're going to have so much insight into how to serve them. And through this conversation, you're going to want to follow them as they lead you to their problem. So I'm going to give you a list of questions. But you don't want to get stuck on those questions. You don't want to be too rigid. You want to follow them and where they're leading the conversation, because they're going to tell you what's the most intense problem that they have, or what's the most often problem that they have. And again, you never want to lead with your current idea. Like, hey, here's my idea. What do you think about it? They're going to say, it's probably pretty good. And you're not going to be able to learn as much as you would hope in these types of sessions. So I've gathered 5 questions here. From 2 people I have a lot of respect for, Heaton Shaw and Eric Mijikovsky, both very successful entrepreneurs. And so what you're going to do is find people who have the impact problem or people who have the business problem, and you're just going to ask to meet with them. Right now, you might ask to do a phone call or a video chat, but hopefully when things go back to normal, you could ask them to coffee, ask them to a meal, and just have a conversation around and use these questions to kind of guide the conversation. So the first 2 questions, very important. In my opinion, these are the most important 2 out of the 5. So the first one is, what is your number 1 challenge around blank? What's your number 1 challenge? And number 2 is, can you tell me about the last time you had this problem? So one challenge for you is that you're going to have to figure out how to fill in that blank there. And it's basically how you describe their problem in a general way, with as few words as possible. So when I was doing Learn Money startup, we were trying to do a personal finance app around education. So we asked people, what is your number 1 challenge around managing your money? So that was how we filled in the blank there, because it's around personal finances. And then, can you tell me about the last time you had this problem? It's going to help you give you a lot of context and the story behind the problem that they're experiencing. And you're going to be able to see how your eventual solution will be able to fit into their story. So, the 3, 4, and 5, also important. Again, don't get stuck on them, and don't like, oh, I didn't get to question number 5, so the conversation was a failure. But here's more questions to help guide an effective conversation. Why was this hard? So asking about the problem that they're experiencing. Why was this hard for you? Why was this challenging? Have you tried anything to solve this problem? Have you tried anything else? Have you tried anything already? If they haven't tried anything, then maybe it shows that it's not a really severe problem for them, right? And then, what don't you love about the solutions you've already tried? So whether it's on the impact side or the business side, this is going to help to show the things that you could build into your solution to really stand out. So they're just going to start handing you ideas. So I tried this thing, but I tried using Excel sheets, but it was just really boring and I got confused. And so whatever they're going to say is going to hand you the elements of what you should be building. So again, after you ask the person each question, you just kind of dig into it from there. Don't be rushed to go, okay, question number 2, question number 3, just to have a natural flowing conversation. Again, trying to learn more about the problem. Really your goal in these conversations, and just to be as a social entrepreneur in general, is to fall in love with the problem, honestly, not so much falling in love with your solution, right? So you're dating your ideas because you're falling in love with the problem that you're solving. And these conversations around the number 1 challenge can tell you what their biggest pain points are in this area. And so that'll help you really hone in and to solve that problem better than other people are solving it already. So whether it's a customer, they might be paying someone else and just start paying you. Or if it's an impact problem, maybe no one's helping them and you're going to be able to actually help them because you're really listening to what their problem is and what they're experiencing. From there, these conversations are absolute gold mines. I hope you start to experience that as you have these conversations. You can use the info that they hand you to name your company, to write your marketing material, to focus your sales pitch, to design your website. Like everything that you do in your business can be founded on these conversations that you're having. And everything is focused around the problem, especially in words that they use and that they can relate to. So we had this in the Learn Money example. So we're a personal finance education app. And we started having these conversations, and a lot of people kept saying, you know, when it comes to money, I just don't even know where to start. I just feel so lost. So we changed our name. We changed our name from Learn Money to Starting Line, because we wanted to use the exact words that they had used, and we changed our company name completely. And so that was a way that we based different elements of our company on these conversations that we were having. So I'm about 2 minutes over, and we're going to have time for some Q&A, but we want to leave you with some action steps here. So here are the main 4 areas that we talked about. And again, Carlos has graciously sent out a worksheet for all of you. So it's got all this written out, and it has like the 5 questions and the 8 questions and everything. But you're going to write a 1 sentence that describes the impact problem you're solving for your beneficiary. And then 1 sentence, a different sentence that describes the business problem you're solving for your customer. And then step 3 of your action steps is to really honestly and genuinely answer the 8 questions about finding the right problem. Is this a good problem to solve? And is this the right problem for me to solve? And then your 4th action step, which is really exciting, is to talk to 3 customers and 3 beneficiaries in the next 2 weeks, and use those 5 questions to guide the conversation and see what you can learn. And we're really excited to see what you learn and how you develop your skills as a social entrepreneur in these conversations. So that is what I have. Again, thank you very much for joining us. And Carlos mentioned he sent the worksheet in an email. He's going to send it after this meeting, so you expect that in your email. And we're going to open it up, Carlos and I, for some Q&A.
All right. Thank you, Alex. Really appreciate that time. And again, as we're diving into this, we do want to mention that this first workshop is part of a 3-part series. Our next workshop will be hosted on May 27th. Today is May 13th, California time, about 7:14 p.m. Alex, I'm going to throw out this first question to you. So one question that came in is, all this, does this mean that we have to tackle 2 groups or address 2 groups in their case, which are customers and beneficiaries?
Almost always that ends up being the case. Yeah. So remember, before we start like with groups or with people, let's figure out what is the impact problem. So what's the social or environmental problem that we want to be solving? And that will lead you, as you narrow in and hone in, to a really specific group of people that you want to start serving. Maybe eventually you serve more and more people, but let's start with a really narrow group of people. Now, if they are under-resourced or for whatever reason, you can help them by running this business that solves this other set of people. Then yeah, in most cases, you're going to actually be serving 2 different groups of people. It's a very unique challenge of social enterprise, and it's absolutely not easy. There are some where it's the same, but again, remember the community music school, they were serving the students, and the school district was their customer. So it's often very connected. So it's clear how the school district cares about the welfare of the students. But technically, the students aren't paying for it. It's the school district that's paying for it. So often, yes, you'd be serving 2 different groups as a social enterprise.
Well, one thing I'll note as a center, and Alex and I will note, is that entrepreneurship, will never sugarcoat it. It's very sexy these days. It's very fun. It's exciting, but it's not easy. Mm-hmm. And so solving a business problem in itself is difficult, but then solving both a social and or environmental problem along with the business problem can be a little bit more complicated. And so we take special care in identifying both. However, if you guys remember Alex's example of two two ropes intertwined or two strands intertwined to make one stronger rope. Again, it's not meant to say, hey, you're solving an environmental or social problem on this side and you're solving a business problem on this side, but actually they're hand in hand go together. And so as we set up operations, and I know we're being general here, but as we dive deeper into your businesses, or as you have gone deeper with your businesses, this will make more and more sense. Alex, other question that I see here is, do we need to apply a needs analysis to identify our customers and beneficiary needs? I think that needs analysis too, if we can frame this question, is like how can we assess our customer and beneficiary needs? And you kind of answered this in the questions, but if you can reiterate or maybe go a little bit deeper to help everyone understand this specific question.
Yeah, so I think, so needs is very closely tied to their pain point, right? Or their frustration or the problem that they're experiencing. So I'm not, the person who asked this question probably has maybe a specific idea of what a needs assessment looks like. My guess is that it's probably pretty spot on. And so again, this problem that they're experiencing, what is the hardest thing about it for them? Get some of that story around that. Get some of the story of how they experience it, when they experience it, how they feel when they experience it. And then understand what is hard about it. Why is it hard? Why is it challenging? And then figure out if they've tried to do anything else. And so if they have these unmet needs that you're seeing, I think that's, and if you feel like a needs assessment is necessary, then I think you found a problem. It's very likely that you have found a problem because you're seeing these people who have these unmet needs. And I think that's your nose per se is having you follow the right direction. I don't know if that's helpful or answers the question, but I think the short answer is yes.
Totally. And we'll say that there is a spectrum of needs, both on a business side and a customer's and a beneficiary side. Alex, you've shared an example with me that if someone has their hair on fire and all they have closest to them is a brick, and you walk up to this person and they're hitting their head with the brick, it probably hurts really bad, but it's their only solution, right? And so, and it might partially put out the problem, but it's their only solution. And so now, say Priscilla comes along and she goes, here's a bucket of water, right? Or here's a blanket to suffocate the fire. Then that would be a much more effective solution, and you could probably get them to pay something for that. That's a little bit different than myself waking up in the morning and saying, man, I have to bend over and put on my socks. I wish there was a solution for this. If you told me you would sell me a machine for $1,000 to put my socks on every morning, I probably wouldn't pay for that, right? But if I had a pain big enough where my hair caught on fire every morning, and you had a solution for that, I'd probably pay $1,000 for that, if not a lot more. And this is just a general example, but again, Alex, would you add anything to that?
I think that's a great point. I think the sock example is a good example. You have it every day, so that's very often, but it's not very intense. So it's not an intense problem, right? So as you're assessing these problems that people are experiencing, the chances of you being able to build a business on helping people put on socks in the morning is pretty low because it's a very not intense problem, right? So I think it's a great example.
Another question that I see here, Alex, is I feel like my idea sort of solves the problem. How can I get better at solving this problem?
It's a great question. I think in entrepreneurship, like you just have to try. You just have to go for it. We'll talk about this later, but in a future webinar. So I'm really excited that you're at this point. We're going to encourage you to try and build something in 1 week and then take that to the people who have a problem and see if it's helpful or not. And then you get to, if it's not helpful, you get to see why it's not helpful, maybe talk to them about it. And then the next week you improve it and you go back. So I would say just doing as many repetitions as possible. You're going to get better at it, but through the process, you're also going to learn more about the problem, which is going to give you a more clear picture of how to solve that. And yeah, I don't know, anything else to add there, Carlos?
I think that's great, Alex. And you introduced us to a model where we're continuing to define an MVP, right? And as we continue to get better at listening to our customers, empathizing with them, and then understanding what they need, I think we'll be able to iterate our problem a little bit better.
Absolutely. I would say there's nothing else that should guide your iterations or your improvements more than just purely what is the problem they're experiencing and how do they like really need it to be solved. And something that's an interesting note too, as you talk with people, sometimes, so I'm not saying don't believe people, but sometimes they'll say something and then they'll do something else. So that's why these conversations are a helpful foundation. And then we're going to build an MVP, right? A basic solution, and we're going to hand it to them and see what they actually do with it. Because their actions, again, speak louder than words, right? I mean, that's a common phrase. So that's something to keep in mind too. But yeah.
Okay. This was tied more to like a revenue idea, right? And I think we'll dive deeper into this. But I want to take my business online. I have a storefront that I've run for 4 years now. What are recommendations as I take my business online?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you see a lot of businesses that are successful running online and making that transition. I think that some of the challenges that people experience is when they put something online, there actually it has to be it's similar in the way that your physical store has to be in a place where people can see it or they know where it is. Your online store has to be in a place somehow where people will see it or people will be driven to that website. So there's so many things we can't get into right now. Social media marketing, SEO, search engine optimization. There's a lot of things, but to move to online, I would really make sure that you're not broadening too much to like, oh, now we're trying to serve everyone. And who is everyone? Like I can't point to everyone, but let's say there's a group that you know their problems and you know them and you can get in contact with them or you know where they hang out and you can take your business there online. Yeah, that's a short bit. I admittedly don't have a ton of experience with online businesses, but those are some things that I've observed from people who have done it well.
Yeah, and I'd look at, doing business online as a revenue stream. And so again, as Alex mentioned, understanding who your customer is, who you're reaching will allow you to grow that more effectively. But yeah, definitely message me and I'd love to talk more about your ideas there. Alex, I think this is a great question here is what do we do when the beneficiary and customer have been facing a problem for so long, right? And we're trying to solve that problem that they don't really see it. They don't really care. They don't really realize it's a problem.
Mm.
And if you don't mind, I can speak to that as well.
Please hop in.
I think one of the things we see in our experience for consumers and even beneficiaries in a Western context, I can't speak always for a global context, is when people buy stuff, they're not always trying to completely solve a problem, but just trying to make their life a little bit better. And so the example that I continually think of are people trying to eat healthier. Most of the time, they're not trying to be healthy, they're just trying to lose weight, right? And this distinction is true from one end where, and I've had various personal fitness or personal, I'd say eating coaches, however you may frame that, personal health coaches who have come to the CCT trying to figure out like, why don't people want to be healthy for the long term? But actually they realize that people come to them in March and April because they're trying to get ready for the summer to look good at the beach, right? And that might sound, but it's the reality that we've seen. And so if you magnify that problem across communities, the same stands to be true, is that a problem can often be overwhelming for a community, for an individual, for a customer, that solving it almost sounds too good to be true. But how do you create a snowball effect that you begin to solve that problem in increments? Again, because a problem we'll see, especially for individuals, for communities, weren't created in 2 or 3 days, but we'll see systemic poverty, environmental pollution, landfill waste, polluted waters. They were developed over years over decades. And not to say that it will take that long to reverse that, but it is a slower process than maybe some of us would like to admit. Alex, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think your example of eating healthy is a great example. So I think like eating healthy is a broad problem, right? And then you found a specific problem, right? So a lot of people are trying to lose weight, and even more specific, maybe we're serving ex-college athletes or people who used to be in athletics but are finding it difficult to stay. Yeah, Carlos and I are friends, so I know who I'm talking to. So that'd be a specific problem of why Carlos wants to eat healthy. That's his problem that he's experiencing. So I'm not going to like sit here and pretend that this is easy by any stretch of the imagination. I think that when people are so used to these problems that have been happening for so long, the problem might be intense and it might happen often, but they've gotten used to it. And so even if they recognize it or not, they might not ever, it might have a hard time believing that someone can really solve that for them. But a couple of things you might try. And again, I would love to talk more about your specific situation, but I think they might have the problem they might be experiencing is probably pretty complex. It might be multiple problems that compound together and that have created this like long lasting, huge problem, broad problem that they're experiencing. So what is one of the specific problems that they're experiencing that either or both that you can actually really do something about, or that would be like the most impactful for them. So hopefully, I mean, a lot of broad problems. Carlos mentioned, systemic poverty, huge problem, very complex, and it's made up of a lot of narrow problems that people experience on a daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly basis. Again, speaking without understanding fully the context that you're operating under, I think finding those specific problems that can have the most impact, where you can make a difference and where it would really change that person's experience or their life, hopefully would be a great place to start.
And I'll share, Alex, as we continue to talk about social problems and solving them through business. There are social enterprises, right? There's corporate social responsibility. At the same time, there's nonprofits, and there's iterations in between, right? And there's traditional business. Nonprofits, say on this side, solve problems through charity means, right? They receive donations, they may write grants, and they solve problems that way. So specific social or environmental problems. On this side of the spectrum, you have businesses that solve a customer's problem, right? And in between, you have different iterations. In the middle, you have social enterprise. And I think part of the beauty for social enterprise is if you look at this side of nonprofit, you have folks that depend on donations or charity, which often globally people would say donate about 10% of the GDP in the world, right? That means that business taps into the other 90%. Right? And so looking at sustainable ways to solve problems is what we're looking at here. And so we use a popular phrase at the CCT inspired by a local entrepreneur where he consistently says, if you don't have a margin, there's no mission, right? Or simply said, if you're not generating profit, eventually your mission will cease to exist. And for you, those of you who take social entrepreneurship to the heart, it's going to be important to understand, okay, I'm solving a social problem, I'm solving an environmental problem, or maybe both, but what business problem am I solving that funds this work? One of the beauties of social enterprise and business versus maybe a nonprofit is that your funds are unrestricted, and you're able to invest those as you see fit, as you solve problems. And we can continue to talk more about this. I'm looking at time and don't want to keep eating at time. I know I want to honor the time that we've committed to you guys. But again, as you look to solve problems in your communities, you need to make sure that you're able to generate profits. We can continue to look at these problems. And so I think, Alex, I see a comment pop up here that says problems are not created equal. How do we define a problem when worldviews are different?
Yeah.
When we come with our solutions to other people's problems that can create a problem, especially when they don't call it a problem, how do you suggest assessing and defining a problem? And I think we'll leave this one as our last question. I think it's a phenomenal question, actually, one that we can part with, and then I'll give us some final notes here as we get ready for our next workshop on May 27th.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Problems are not created equal. So some problems are, hey, when I'm scrolling through, like when I watch YouTube videos, the ads are annoying. That is a problem that people experience, right? So I downloaded an ad blocker because I don't like watching the ads, right? Some people experience, hey, I don't know where I'm going to get enough food to feed my children this month, right? Very different magnitude of problem, right? So whatever the level of problem, and a lot of people in this room, I'm guessing, care very deeply about the more significant problems that people are facing. It's okay if you want to do a lighter one. I mean, it's whatever problem that people are experiencing. And so worldviews can be different. There's so many aspects, but something that is encouraging that I've found to be really helpful in this process, like the 6-step process that we're walking through, is you're going to get really close and intimate with the problem that a few people are experiencing. So you're finding this problem and talking to a few people and going very, very deep into that with them. When they don't call it a problem. Yeah, I think that one of the reasons why one of the 8 questions is, do they realize that it's a problem? Or would they, maybe another way to say it is, would they be willing to accept a solution? Like if you offered them something, would they take it, or would they think, no, I don't have that problem, even if they do? At the end of the day, we can't convince people, like that's not our response. We can't control other people as much as we may try to help. So that is difficult, but I think like the more that you walk through this, even just having conversations with people, you may come in like, hey, I'm helping this person because they seem like they are food insecure. And you may walk out of that conversation knowing that another problem is way more intense for them. I don't know what that would be, but you may walk out knowing, oh, wow, this problem is really intense and they have it all the time. And I want to start thinking about how I can solve that. And so another reason why these longer conversations with a fewer amount of people, the quality of the conversation rather than the quantity of having 100 conversations is going to be really insightful for you, I hope. So not sure if that addressed it perfectly, but.
And I think just sharing one example, Alex, as you talk about maybe who someone has food insecure, one solution would be to give them food. Someone's other example would be, I'm going to give them employment because they lack employment, and because of that, they are food insecure, right? So there, again, you have one big problem with multiple solutions to meeting that problem. And so, again, I know one thing that we'll accept is many of you are further along in a social enterprise journey than others in this workshop. So you might be, you've already have an MVP, or maybe you're close to finding an MVP, or you might have, I had an idea today. I woke up this morning that I want to make sure that stray animals don't go to the pound, right? And you might not necessarily have a way to make money yet, but you're in that journey, and we want to honor both groups in our workshop. And we hope that you have found this time helpful as we dive into this. So keep an eye out for an email from me with what would call homework, right? Again, you're not going to receive a grade for this. This is all on your own. But if you're working on a social business, as you look to solve problems, as you look to build a business, this is part of your journey. And so we definitely do invite you to join us on May 27th for the second part of this workshop. Again, these workshops build on themselves. They also are standalone workshops in different parts of the journey. And so what I'll do in an email that goes out to you is also post a Calendly link. Through that link, you'll actually be able to jump on my calendar and set a 20-minute meeting. I'd love to sit with you virtually and talk more about your business idea, about the problem you're solving, and be of any help we can be in the journey. That's what we exist to do. That's what we're here to do. And Alex and I look forward to meeting you guys more and more. And so as I wrap our time today, I really do want to say thank you. It's passionate people like you who want to use business to solve problems all around the world that really fuel us in the work that we do. It continues us, and so we're excited that you're here. And so guys, thank you again for being here. And feel free, I'm gonna hang out for a little bit for another 2 to 3 minutes if you guys have any questions to pop in, but our recording will end here shortly. So again, thank you for being here. We'll talk soon. Peace be with you.